As you guys saw yesterday with the Miami Dolphins, things are about to change in a big way. This is the time of the year where everybody looks at their rosters and they say, okay, this guy, if you release them all, we would save our team about $50 to $60 million. So we expect over the next week or so for there to be some much bigger players available in free agency than there are right now. So on today's show, I'm going to give you 5 cut candidates that I think the Ravens could sign if those teams do potentially cut those players. So important dates to keep a watch out for. March 3rd is when the franchise tag deadline happens, 4 p.m. Eastern time. 6 days after that, March 9th, team can contact agents of unrestricted free agents, and then all hell is going to break loose on March 11th when the free agency signing period opens and trading period begins. Of course, that's all at 4 p.m. Eastern time. You want the Ravens to make a move in free agency? If you do me one big favor. Hit that thumbs up button and like today's video. The Athletic and NFL.com released an article giving us a cut candidate for each team. I'm going to give you 5 from those 2 articles combined. I would like for the Baltimore Ravens, starting with wide receiver Sam Pittman, formerly, or still technically, with the Indianapolis Colts, although a lot of people believe there is a decent chance he is not going to be a Colt for very much longer. And the big reason, as is the reason with every single one of these guys, is the money aspect of it. Because if Indianapolis decides to move on from Michael Pittman, they would save cap space $24 million. And for a team that feels like they're probably close to competing for Super Bowls, but they might need to make a move here or a move there in free agency on the defensive side of the ball and making sure Daniel Jones is going to be able to come back, that number looks probably very, very appealing. Michael Pittman looks pretty appealing to me, if I'm being 100% honest with you. We know that there are problems in this Ravens wide receiver room. I don't want to say problems. We know that this Ravens wide receiver room could be much better, and I think you add Michael Pittman to that equation, that happens. Back-to-back years, 1,500 yards combined. Year before that, 1,152. Year before that, almost 100 catches, 925 yards. And one of the big reasons that Michael Pittman makes a lot of sense, at least to me, for the Baltimore Ravens is because of his former college wide receivers coach, Kerry Colbert, who now is your Baltimore Ravens wide receiver coach, right? Those 2 guys were with each other at USC. It would make sense for Kerry Colbert, if Michael Pittman does end up getting cut, to be pounding the table and say, hey, look, this is my guy. I would love the opportunity to get to coach him again. And then Baltimore would get something that I personally love, a big X wide receiver, which Lamar Jackson has never had. 6'4", 223 pounds at 28 years old, which is awesome, right? Because DeAndre Hopkins was that guy for Lamar Jackson, but DeAndre Hopkins' career, the prime of it, is far behind him. Michael Pittman's still young, okay? You look at the receiving yards for the last 2 years, that might turn you off. To me, it doesn't, because you got to look at 2024. He played with who? Anthony Richardson? 2025, he played with who? Who even was their quarterback after Daniel Jones went down? It was Riley Leonard for the last game of the season. And then Phillip Rivers. Like, are you kidding me? We're going to hold it against him for not getting 1,000 yards? I personally will not. Should the Ravens sign Michael Pittman? Give me a yes or a no down below in the comment section. I think that it would be a perfect complement to this wide receiver room, a room that is, definitely could use some reinforcements. We all know the defense could use some reinforcements as well, and that's where we get into our next guy. That is cornerback Denzel Ward from the rival Cleveland Browns, one of the only bright spots for Cleveland over the last 4 or 5 years or so. Cutting Denzel Ward would save the Browns $20 million. And the Browns find themselves in this situation with a young quarterback in Shedeur Sanders or Dylan Gabriel, whichever one they decide, a brand new head coach, and one Todd Monken. And so they have a decent bit of money to spend. They'd like some more, though, and cutting a guy like Denzel Ward would give you a lot more money if you feel like you need to plug up a lot of holes that are around this roster. I believe that there is a chance that Marlon Humphrey gets cut for Baltimore. And if that does happen, then you would need some help in that quarterback room. Like, you have trust in Nate Wiggins. I do, at least. Chidobe Awuzie, he's about to be a free agent. Other than that, it's like TJ Tampa, Bilal Kone, Robert Longerbeam. Like, there's not a ton in this room that's super-duper inviting. I think you need to hit cornerback in the draft, but if you're able to get a guy like Denzel Ward, who wants to come and finally play for a contender, to pair him up there with Nate Wiggins, 2 really young and talented quarterbacks, I think that would do this team a lot of really great things, okay? Obviously, I think that they should re-sign Chidobe Awuzie from how good he played in 2025. I don't think he's going to be very expensive. Marlon, we'll see what happens, but I do believe it's a coin flip as of right now. If he gets cut or not, and if he does, you're definitely going to need some help in that cornerback row. Real quickly, we got more cut candidates to talk about, but I do want to tell you guys about our awesome sponsor of today's show, our awesome friends over at PrizePicks. Right now, you can shoot your shot on PrizePicks and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. That's right. PrizePicks is now giving you $50 in lineups when you sign up and play your first $5. PrizePicks make every dunk, every dime, every board that much more exciting, so don't miss this chance to get started on America's #1 app for sports picks. PrizePicks is simple to play. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you could cash in. Pick from all your favorite sports, anything from basketball, baseball, hockey, UFC, soccer, college basketball, tennis, golf, esports, and more. PrizePicks now has early payouts. If your player gets off to a hot start, you may now have the option to cash out those winnings before the game even finishes. And as the big game wrapped up just a couple of weeks ago between the Patriots and, of course, the champion Seattle Seahawks, you might think that football season's over, but with our friends at PrizePicks, it is not, because they've got some season-long ones available. And I took the more on Myles Garrett, 13.75 sacks, the more on Saquon Barkley, 1,225 rush yards, even the more on Justin Jefferson, 7.5 receiving touchdowns as well. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Link to this promo is in the comments and description of today's video. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Up next, let's go to the defensive line. How about Arik Armstead out of Jacksonville? Could be a guy who is a nice veteran presence up there on that defensive line, a guy who also is expected to be cut because the Jacksonville Jaguars, if they do decide to move on from him, would save around $14.5 million. And for a guy of his age, being able to get off that contract and save that amount of money is something that would be very, very advantageous for a team like Jacksonville, who had a very, very surprisingly solid year last year under first-year head coach Liam Cohen, and expects to make that a something they do every year, right? Go to the playoffs, be a top 4 seed, all of that jazz. When I look at the Ravens' edge room, like, it needs a complete and utter makeover, okay? Because right now, the guys you have on this roster are Mike Green, Adisa Isaac, Tavius Robinson. Those are your 3 guys you have under contract. Kyle Van Noy, free agent. Draymond Jones, free agent. David Ajabo, free agent. Now, I'm not saying that's a terrible thing that all those guys are free agents, but what I am saying is you need some help there. I'd love to get Draymond Jones back in the room. I'd love to hit it early in the draft. Arik Armstead could be a vet that a guy like Jesse Minter is able to utilize, kind of like how he has been able to utilize vets these past seasons over there in Los Angeles. Name a free agent you think the Ravens should sign down below in the comment section. We got 2 more possible free agents. But before I get into those guys, I want you to tell me one that you want to be a Baltimore Raven. Tremaine Edmunds, linebacker out of Chicago. I think that this guy's still got a lot of really, really good football left in him. If he were to be cut by the Chicago Bears, that would save Chicago around $15 million. And I've got a decent, expectation for Chicago to be pretty aggressive, given the fact that Ben Johnson is their head coach and Ryan Poles is their GM. In the upcoming free agency, cutting Edmunds would save them a lot more money that they'd then be able to utilize to try to turn their team, kind of like Jacksonville, into a perennial contender each year, right? Year in and year out. Edmunds dealt with injuries in 2025, played 10 games, really impressive through 10 games, 89 tackles, averaging almost 9 tackles a game. That, averaged out to a full 17-game season is like 150 tackles, if you're wondering. 4 interceptions, really active with his hands, 9 pass breakups, 3 tackles for loss, and a sack as well. Look, Roquan Smith, I think this year is do or die for him. I think there's a decent chance this is the last year you'll see Roquan Smith as a Baltimore Raven. If you want to sign Tremaine Edmunds to kind of give yourself a little bit of depth in that room and also, maybe try to phase out Roquan Smith, I wouldn't mind that. I don't think this one's the most likely out of all of them, but, you add in Tremaine Edmunds, I am all about adding as much elite defensive talent as you can. We're going to end this one on the offensive line. Okay, we're going to sandwich defense with 2 offensive players, and we're going to wrap this thing up with Ben Powers, the offensive guard for the Denver Broncos, left guard. He played this last season. Didn't play super duper long, dealt with an injury after 9 games, missed the rest of the season. But, they had a guy who was a backup, a rookie that they felt was, hey, he did a really good job in replacement of Powers, so why not most likely cut him, save $12.7 million. I think of the people that are on this list, funny enough, I think Ben Powers would be my number 1 choice. He'd be very, very close to the top of that list, right? Which seems funny because we've given you big names like Michael Pittman, Denzel Ward, Tremaine Edmunds we just talked about. And Ben Powers, kind of like all offensive linemen, are one of those guys that's just kind of like, cool. Like, it's an offensive lineman, big white guy. Like, what does it matter that much? Well, I believe that he'd be a very, very good addition to this room. I also think he'd give Baltimore a lot of draft flexibility. I think right now they're pretty much tied to one of their first 2 draft picks being an offensive lineman. If you sign Ben Powers, you can use your first 2 draft picks like solely on defensive line, which I think would be really, really beneficial. And when I look at this offensive line from last year, this one, I see a lot of question marks. Not your tackles, but your 2 guards and center, they're all free agents, okay? Faalele, excuse me, Linderbaum, Vorhees. They could all be not Baltimore Ravens next year. Now, I think we're excited about Daniel Faalele and Andrew Vorhees not being Ravens, but you're going to need a veteran presence on the inside of that line. I think that's exactly what Ben Powers would be able to bring to the Baltimore Ravens. I think offensive line is probably one of the Ravens' biggest offseason needs, given the fact that what Lamar Jackson went through last season and, just having a whole new regime. But I want you guys to tell me, what do you think is the Ravens' biggest offseason need? Let me know down below in the comment section. Weigh in with your answer. What's their biggest offseason need? Let me know. That's going to do it for today's show. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. We'll be live again later today. Make sure to check us out, of course, Wednesday evening. We're always live on Wednesday evening. Subscribe, turn on those notifications so you don't miss them all.